Hello people, I'm back here. Today I'm gonna take a look at diffs in the front, this one, and also in the rear. To get access to this diff, I first had to unscrew the bumper. That's just 2 screws. That's on the here under the car. Then I have to remove this hinge pin block. That's also in the front. And I also loosened the sway bar, and as you can see I have unscrewed the shocks, lift them up so I can get easy access. And now I have access to the differ. The first thing you should check with the diff is that it's not very much play here, that it's seated good here. If you have too much play here, the diff can move and it can start to skip on the gears, and then that can destroy the gear. And if you have too much play here, you maybe have to add the shimmer, so you press the diff more to the right, so you get the gear more connected. But it looks good. It's a bit different from the design I've seen in Arma, but it's of course not that different. So I'm now I see a little bit of grease here. That's good on the gear here. But I have to open this diff and see how much silicone oil is in there. And I maybe gonna add some silicone oil if it's too little. And I'm not sure what weight I'm gonna use. I added 150 key in the center diff. For this diff, maybe 50 key. But if since this car is maybe set up for racing, I guess it's very light oil in this. So I'm maybe just gonna add some heavier oil. I'm not, as I said, I'm not a racer, so I'm not that care very much about the setup. But I want the center diff to have some heavier weight oil, so both you get good traction on both the front wheels and the rear wheels. But if it's too heavy here, you may see the car when it comes around corner. If this flashlight now is the front of the car, when you turn, you maybe see that it's bring the rear out. That's because you have very good traction on both the front and the rear. And when you turn, the rear can sometimes, yes. So I have to test it. If it's too heavy with 150k in the center diff, I'm gonna go down a bit there. But I'm gonna start here also with maybe 50k in the front. So both the front wheels will have good traction. And I'm not sure if the word traction is good. I just mean that both the wheels will pull the car forward. Not the differential is very light. And when you turn, one of the wheels will maybe turn a lot slower than the other. So I want both the wheels to pull the car forward. So now I have access to this diff. I'm going to take it out. Just as I remember it, I've also done a little job on the body here. You can see I added 2 skids on the roof. I have a friend that do 3D printing, and he is printing these. I believe they are nylon or something. And you have the mount inside, you can see. So I'm not sure if they help a lot, but it looks cool also. But I hope they can protect the car a bit. I also added some duct tape, or what they call it, on the inside of the car. This tape is very good, very strong. It don't rip apart easy. Also at the exhaust hole here, this is where the exhaust can come out. This one is here. I added some, I believe they call it aluminium tape or something. That's some heat protecting tape. So I just added that around the hole here. Not sure if it do anything, but maybe it can protect the body a bit there. So that is all I'm gonna do with this body. After I check the diffs, I'm maybe gonna look at mounting the RPM bumper here, so I get more protection. So that's all for now. Now I opened the front diff, and it looks a lot the same as the center diff. For armor cars, they talk about the open diff. That's the old design, and the new design that's called LSD diffs. And some people hate the LSD diffs and love the old design, the open diffs. And it looks like this HoBao car got all the diffs are open design. I have just good experience with the LSD diff on the Arma, on my Arma Creighton EXP car. So I like both of the diffs really, but the open design is a bit more easy to work on. The LSD diffs got more parts, but here we have the open design, and it looks like the sun gear here is a bit more beefier than on the Arma cars. And also, as I showed you in the video before here, for the center diff, the pin under that holds the sun gear and also holds this out cup, or what they call it. That's 2.5 millimeter diameter on that pin on this HoBao car. On the Arma it's 2.125 or something. I hope I say that correct, but the pin is a bit more thick, bigger diameter, a little beefier on this HoBao car. So it looks good. Also the diff housing was not too much play inside here. So I believe the HoBao diffs are okay. I can't see any trouble there. They added silicone oil in this, and it goes just up to the cross, if you can see it. It reaches just up to this cross, so it's okay. And I must say also, I twisted the diff when I got it out and felt then, and it had okay resistance. This is the front diff, so it should not be that much resistance as is in the center diff. And also, since this is a racer car, I believe they're using light oil, but I thought it was okay. So I'm just gonna remove a bit of this oil and add a bit of some more heavy oil to get just a bit more resistant than a diff are. Not very much, but really this diff was perfect. The only, I checked the diff, center diff, and that had little to less oil in it. You could see the silicone oil was not reaching up to the cross. It was under the cross. So the center diff had a little too little oil, but this have good. So the front diff is okay. So I'll be back later. I just opened the rear diff now. It's the same design, this open diff design. It looks exactly the same as the front diff. And the center diff, the only difference with the center diff is that it got the bigger spur gear, of course. When I took this apart, it was much the same in the front. I had to remove first the 2 screws here under, and I also removed the sway bar and released the shocks. And I also have to remove this hing pin block. And here I can see it's some sort of tuning options, I believe. On this hing pin block it says 0.25, and is it degrees? So maybe that is this plastic in this holes. So there are maybe some option part here if you want to adjust that a bit, but that's not what I'm looking into since I'm just bashing this car. The diff looks alright, but it's a bit too little oil in it. You can see that it's some oil, but I can't see the oil reaching up to the cross at all. So I'm gonna add some oil in this diff. So to sum up, all the diffs are open design diffs. That's easy to work on. They look really good and beefy. No shimming, and the diff hose sits tight and good in the gear hose. So I don't believe it's necessary with shimming. Maybe later when you are driven a lot of times you can just check if the diffs are sitting tight and good still. And the pins under the sun gear is 2.5 millimeters, so a bit beefier than what we see on armor cars. Generally, I would say the diffs looks very good. Looks stronger than what I see on armor cars. So you just have to experience how the diffs holds up. But the front diff was okay with oil and everything. I just added a bit more thicker oil in the front diff, not necessary. The center diff was okay, but had a little less oil, so you could add a bit more oil there. And this rear diff, I see it has too little oil. You could drive with this car. It's not a big issue, but I will add some more oil in this rear diff. So that was the check of the diffs on this HoBao Hyper VS2 NITRO car. Now I'm gonna finish here, assemble it again, and then I'm gonna look at to mount the front bumper, I believe. So back later. I'm gonna mount the front bumper now. It's just a Arma 6S bumper made by RPM. Do I have a spare? No. So this I'm gonna mount. The holes here on the HoBao is a bit longer this way and a bit closer this way. But I'm gonna try to use the holes, mount hole there in the rear, and I'm gonna drill new 4mm holes here. Where you can see I've just punched a mark. Then I'm gonna use a Dremel, or what it's called, to remove these small bumps here, so the bumper will lie flat there. Then we'll see how it goes. It also have this part here. I maybe have to cut off a bit on the edges there, so the wheels don't come into it. Well, we got the car ready now. I believe I've done most of the small adjustment I wanted. As you can see, I now have a front bumper. This is just a RPM 81812 bumper. That's front bumper skid plate for Arma, Creighton 6S and other 6S vehicles. Works with V5, EXP and older models. So this is just bumper, you can see, and I used the 2 holes in the rear and mounted the screws there, but in the front I had to drill 2 new holes, and I just mounted the screws there, and it's sit good. It's flat here, so it's all good. I also had to cut off a bit on the edges there. It was a bit too wide, so when you turn, the wheels don't hit here. Also, I did use a bit longer screws. The stock screws here are M4 16 millimeters. I have used M4 20 millimeters, but I believe it's okay with at least M4 18 millimeters. So the screws I used are 20 millimeters. It looks okay, but you should be a bit careful when not using too long screws, because the screws go into the gearbox or upside there. I mounted the rear wing. I added some skid plates here on top. I'm maybe going to add protection here on the heat sink here, but we'll see that. I also have this body clip with this good to hold on small plastic here. That's a friend who had 3D printed this. Easy to hold on and easy to pull off. For the body, like I said, I have just added some tape here, aluminium tape around the exhaust pipe hole, if it's very hot there. So that looks okay. I'm not going to do anything more with this. They are not very expensive, so if this get destroyed sooner or later, I'm just going to buy a new, I believe. I really like the color. It's hard to get the color right on the movie. It's sort of yellow, sort of a little bit green tint. But I've seen on the movie, it looks more green than it really is. It's more yellow. Here it looks maybe not true yellow. This paper got a bit of yellow hair, and it's a bit more green tint on the hair. But I really like it. It's look like a sport car. So now I have still removed the servo tray. All the electronics are here because I'm going to change the servos, and that's easy to do when you have removed this. Yeah, I'm going to talk a bit about not exactly weak points, but what I think HoBao could upgrade on this car, or at least if it was available as an option, so you could upgrade yourself later. The first thing is the wing mount. There's a bit flex in it, but I've heard people say they break it. I'm not sure if it's that easy as it is on the Armor 6S cars. But one good thing is that the 2 screws here that go into the wing mount and into the shock tower, they are M4 screws, 4mm screws. On Armor, if I'm right, I believe they are just 3mm. So they are a bit beefier. So maybe this wing mount can take a bit more punishment. But what often happens is when bashing, you land like this on the wing or upside, the other way down so. But when you land very hard like this, usually the screws are just snap off here with the plate. And then you have to unscrew the complete wing mount, and often also you have to release the complete shock tower here, and because you don't have the a part of the screw still in here. but you usually have this small bit sticking out when you remove the shock tower, so you can get it out. But that's a really pain in the ass, as they say. So if the wing mount could be more flexible, that would maybe not happen that often. I understand it have to be also a bit stiff, because you see the wing mount is going forward here, and you have this large screw going through it and into the chassis support. So a bit of the complete setup or design or strength in the car also comes from the wing mount here. So if this part was very flexible, maybe this would not give that much support to the chassis. But a bit more flexible wing mount would be good. So that was one thing I would like to see. It could just be an option. They could sell a basher rear wing mount, more flexible for use for the bashers. A bumper, of course, would be nice if a HoBao could make something like this, fit more good. For bashers, a bumper is really a good thing. It protects the front and a bit protection for the shocks there. Also, when you land on the nose, this bumper will take a lot of the energy. So maybe less destruction on the car. What else? Yes, the servos. As I said, this battery tray, this is also a maybe, but I see it's not big space here, but if it was possible, the battery tray could maybe be a little bit bigger. You can adjust the position of the battery tray. You see you have 1, 2, 3 here, so you can slip it more forward or back. But that's for a basher, I don't see the point. But okay, if you're into racing, maybe that small adjustments are what you need to get the car to behave in the air and go like you want. So the battery tray could be a bit more bigger, and also the top of the battery tray, you have to screw here with 2 screws. These 2 screws here, they go into the top, and that's a bit fiddling, if that's the right word. It takes a bit time, and as I said before, you screw the screws down, up, screw up, down, many times, and sooner or later the threads are going to be worn out, so the screws will not lock good. So it would be nice if it was another design to get this battery box lid more easy off and on. Something like you see here on the receiver box, easy to release. But I understand the battery tray maybe have to be a bit more locked fast, because when you jump and the battery has some weight, it could not be that very easy, just some small clips. There have to be something that holds it in position even when you crash. Also the servos, I would really like if the servos could take 2S battery, the stock servos, because so many of these receiver batteries, many people like to use 2S batteries. I have ordered 2 new servos, so I can use 2S battery in here. This is the battery. This fits nice in here. So now I'm waiting for the servos so I can change them. Yes. So that's really all the upgrades I would like to see. Servos that can take 2S lipo. Yes, one more thing, yes, but let's see here. A bit bigger battery box if it's that possible to fit in there, and maybe a new solution to open and close the battery box. Wing mount with a bit more flex, that could be an option. You just buy a more flexible wing mount. And one important thing maybe is could be some sort of support there for the front tower. I see if I press really hard on the front tower, it moves a little bit, not much. The rear tower is maybe a bit more supported there, but when you crash and you hit something in the front tower, either something have to bend, but I believe these shock towers are in aluminium 70-75, so they are strong. But then if they not bend, usually the screws are gonna rip out and you're gonna destroy the threading in the gear case, and then you have to change the complete gear case, at least the top of it, and that takes a lot of time because there are many parts that you have to unscrew. And that's not unusual that you jump and hit land on the front or some crazy things. So I would love to see some kind of support there. There could just be some metal part that you somehow did screw onto the tower and up here, and it could mount onto this screw here that's go to the support to the chassis, because then when you hit something here high up, the forces will go to this metal part here and onto the brace here, what I call it, and down to the chassis. So you have this transfer of energy. So I'm not sure if I'm gonna try to find a solution myself. It's maybe not a big problem. Maybe I'm just gonna start bashing a car and see how it goes. But if it rips out some screws, I really have to find a solution to give this tower a bit more support. And usually it's when you crash and the forces come this way, so we have to something that you stick here. Yes, you understand. The rear tower looks a bit more beefy, but also here, of course, you could have something that you screw on to here or something and down to this chassis support. For the armor cars and many other cars, you have M2C that makes this kind of tower support there for the rear, and not anything for the front, I believe. So that's also something that could be upgraded. Maybe just an option part that fits here good, but you have the body here, so I'm not sure how that's gonna look. But there's always a solution. So that was all I had to say. Possible upgrades: servos supports 2S directly, better tower support here in the front, battery case a bit bigger, but that's maybe not possible, but at least a better release and open mechanic. Wing mount a bit more flexible, that could also be an option. Just make a more flexible wing mount that people can buy that as an option. So now the car is always only waiting for the servos, and I got the servos. I have to check the electronics that set up, so I see the throttle is opening the carb as it shall, and the brakes works. Maybe set up a failsafe, of course the failsafe on the transmitter and receiver, but also maybe a rubber band here, so if the electronics completely cut out, the carb will be closed. Maybe gonna look at that later. I also added these springs, a bit stiffer springs, so I think the car is good now. And that was really all, I believe. So waiting for the servos, and when the weather is good, I can maybe break in this engine. So that will be exciting. And the first bash will be exciting. Another thing that of course would be very nice, that was if HoBao did make a stronger chassis. The chassis look okay, and the car is not the biggest and heaviest, so maybe it's gonna hold up. But if you jump high, you may be gonna break the chassis, or if you go full throttle into some hard objects, you may be gonna bend the chassis, even with this support. The chassis is not 70-75, I believe. If I'm wrong, HoBao could correct me. But it would be nice if they had a 70-75 chassis upgrade, of course an option. I believe the thickness is 3 mm of this chassis. So that would be nice. And all the things I say because I'm a basher, I'm not a racer guy that races on tracks and that sort of things. So we really see these parts bend and break. For bashing, bumper is good. A bit stronger chassis would be good, and support to the towers would be good. The hinking blocks looks okay, I think. I'm not gonna bash this car so hard that I do with my armor cars, the monster trucks like Creighton and Notorious. One other thing that's very good, I like, that is the shock mounts here. They are just 2 parts. You have, or maybe 3, but you have this metal part here. You can see it here, and you just have a ordinary screw that goes through it, and the shock is just clipped into this ball here. So if you break this shock mount, you just have to find a new screw, and they are very cheap. Armor have these EXP shock mounts. That is one part. So when you break it in the end, and it's only M3 3 mm, you have to change the complete shock mount, and that's much more expensive. So that is very nice. Also, it's nice that these shocks, I believe so, are just clipped into this ball here. So if you take a very hard hit, the shock could just snap out of this ball, so you don't break something necessarily. Also here it's ordinary screws here for the shock. And the sway bar, it's very, very nice, I believe. You can see it moving, the other wheel. So it's more beefy sway bar here than I've seen on the armor cars. I remember now that I have stiffer springs there. So before it was even more, you could see even more movement. So I believe the sway bar works. Alright, enough blah blah blah. I come back again when I have got the new servos and when I test the electronics, so you can see how I set up the throttle, the brake, and check the failsafe and everything. One thing that is good when I'm using the new servos and a 2S LiPo battery, you have to be carefully how much used the battery is, because you should not drain voltage below, at least not below 3.0 volt per cell for a LiPo battery. But with the Spektrum receiver and transmitter that I'm going to use, I can on the transmitter see the volt of the battery. So it's a 2S, so I should be carefully and look at the volt on the transmitter and not getting under 6 volt. Then I have to change the servo battery. So that is good. I thought about installing a LiPo alarm, but I don't really need that when I can see the voltage on the transmitter. I can show you that later. So that's all for this. Looks like a really good car. I'm very impressed, really. A lot of beefy parts. Looks like it's well thought, well designed. Of course, how it drives and how the engine behaves, it's all that matter, really. So we come to that later. So, thanks. Sorry for this long video. Thanks. I forgot one thing. On the internet you can find 3D drawings to this wing mount. So I've already asked a bashing friend of me to print it in some more flexible material. So if not HoBao comes up with the option more flexible rear wing mount, one day just search the internet. I can give you the link to the 3D drawing. If you know some people that do 3D printing, they can print it for you. And there's a lot of people, I believe you also find some people that you just send them the file and they print it and can send a finished product to you. It's not expensive usually. So that was the last thing to say. Goodbye.